The Rolex Submariner, no date, the reference 5513, an iconic watch. And just before I ask you any questions, I'm going to tell you the reason this thing became iconic is because in the 1950s it was developed, and by the 60s, Sean Connery wore an earlier example in the first Bond movie, Dr. No.
Yeah.
Now, you're obviously not as old as that, so it obviously isn't yours. Whose is it, or whose was it, I should say?
It was my father's watch. He died recently. I've always known the watch from as a child. I remember him wearing it. But really, it's only since he's died that I've found out so much about him.
So, tell me roughly what you've learnt of his history.
He was a search and rescue diver in the Royal Navy. Through all the incidents that he was involved in, he always wore that watch.
So this is presumably him wearing the watch in this picture here.
On the left, yeah.
And in front of the Wessex, him and all the other crews.
Yep.
Tell me about that one. He seems to be holding a lady there in a bikini.
That was a publicity shot in the year I was born, 1966.
Great picture.
She is very much alive, I promise you. I remember him saying afterwards that she was incredibly heavy.
And then the final picture that looks like somebody coming out of the sea. Talk me through that one.
That is my father himself being rescued after a very serious accident aboard HMS Hermes on the 23rd of January 1967, during which a Sea Vixen fighter aircraft crashed, and also another helicopter that went to rescue the crew of that aircraft also crashed. And my father attempted to rescue the pilot of the fighter and of the helicopter. Unfortunately, both were killed, and his own air supply was exhausted, and he was forced to swim to the surface, during which he swallowed a large amount of aircraft fuel, and that's him being fished out of the sea himself.
I'm going to return briefly to the watch. The reason that I'm so thrilled to see this watch is because this is the original strap, and it's the riveted link, and here it says the 7206. We're getting slightly technical, but that is the original strap for this watch. And here it says 264. So it was made in the second quarter of 1964. So that, you're so lucky to have kept that, because normally most jewellers, and dare I say particularly Rolex, would have thrown it away and put on something else. So it's obviously had a replacement strap.
Yeah.
One of the most important things and the rarest feature of this watch is underneath, below the word Submariner, there's a small horizontal line. Now, during the 50s and the early 60s, these watches, all the luminous paint was rhodium. In other words, pretty highly radioactive. And by the early 60s, the Swiss government passed a law saying we really can't have this in watches anymore. So many of the military submariners have a sign which is T with a circle on it. But prior to that, this underlined dial meant it was trying out various non-radioactive materials, in other words, tritium. Really very, very scarce indeed. We're in an era now when these sort of Rolexes are going just skyrocketing, particularly with the full provenance. I would have no hesitation in putting between 50 and 60,000 pounds.
No, really?
So, wasn't your father a very, very lucky man to have used that all his life? And you're so lucky to have got it as well.
He didn't know the value of it at all.
But he cherished it, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah. He used to wear it and keep doing this all the time. Just keep touching it.
It's an absolute delight for me to see it.
Thank you.
And I might ask you, after we've finished here, if I can just try it on.
Please.
Thank you very much.
Please do. Really, I wasn't very concerned about the value. I wanted to come here and tell the story, really, of that watch and my father, if I possibly could. But the value is just, can't believe it, really. Just can't believe it. I remember my father with such amazing affection and admiration. I just didn't know.
Without doubt, An incredibly lovely watch, very rare. I've never handled one before, never seen one with the underlined dial. And for me, the joy was the full provenance, the original strap, certainly the most interesting Rolex I've seen on the roadshow.